And I'm joined by Mr. Jared James Nichols. How you keeping, buddy?
Good, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, man.
Hey, no worries at all. My pleasure, man. You say Friday you released the self-titled album. First one
Yes.
for a little while since Bad Magic, but been soaking up the last few days. Mate, this album is absolutely solid. I am loving this record. It's
Thanks, man. It feels good. It finally feels good. It's been so long since I put out a record, and not in a way that, it was because of a certain reason. It
mm,
was more like we were touring, and then obviously we dealt with a little something for the past few years. But the reality is to finally have the record out, I'm proud of it, man. This is the record I always wanted to make.
it sounds like a lot more closer to your like to seeing you live than like Bad Magic
Yeah.
or Revival.
Well, here's the thing, man. And I remember I was in the UK. It was 2019, and this guy comes up to me after a show. I'll never forget this. He goes, he was kind of drunk. He goes, mate, and I'm not gonna do my British accent, but he goes, you sounded so good tonight. And I was like, thanks, man. He goes, you sound so much better live than you do on your recordings. And I was like, thanks. And I always felt that way too. I never felt like I was truly comfortable yet in the studio. It's hard to make that transition from capturing the energy and like what it is about that live thing. Because for me, I thrive in that live setting.
Yeah.
So when he said that, it like stuck in my brain. And when it was time to make this record, when I was even thinking about it, I said, I want to make a record that serves as the menu for the live show. So what you're hearing on that album is three guys in a room, no edits, no fixing.
Uh,
That's us playing, and then I sing over it.
So you recorded to tape as well, didn't you? And that I think that always gets a better sort of rawer sound as well.
Yeah, man. So what we did is we did about 2 weeks of like pre-production, just rehearsing, and like basically like in like a oh, I don't know, it was a small room, bad lighting, it wasn't amazing in any way, and we just worked these songs up, and we went in the studio, and we almost set up too like we were playing a show, and had everything mic'd, not a lot of mics, so it was more of a sound setting, and we didn't use any computers, straight to tape, which was first time I've ever done it.
Ah,
And
cool.
it's kind of nerve-wracking because, when you think about it, you're like, our producer, Eddie Spear, you'd hear the tape in our headphones
Uh,
rewinding, and all of a sudden you go, and you go, we're rolling. And we'd have to look at each other and literally be like, all right, let's do it. Like, we all got to do this together.
that's cool, man. So the live sound was definitely something you were sort of aiming for, sort of consciously on it. Then.
100%, man. It's one of those things that, like I said, for me as a player, I feel like I thrive in that live environment. And quite honestly, I don't hear a lot of records anymore, even that come out. And I feel like, although there's a lot of amazing music being made, there's something about the essence in capturing a live recording, especially like to tape, that of course it's throwback, but there's something really, really human about it.
Definitely.
We left all of the scrapes and all of the bumps and bruises. And I feel like this record, if anything, it's just really honest.
Yeah. I think if you take too much of those bumps and scrapes out that you're talking about, I think it can lose that character and that soul of a record as well, because those
Yeah.
tiny little pinches on your fretboard, or a misfill here and there, it's that human element. And I think if you clean it up too much, it sort of loses its character.
Yeah, man. I mean, even so, I totally agree with you. And even so, like, we didn't even use like a metronome, like most times, every time I've ever been in the studio, it's like, all right, what's the tempo? So in your ear, you have click, 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 doo, 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 whatever, right? This one, it was like, no, let me feel it.
Yeah.
Dude, so there's something cool about that too, because it's almost like the music kind of breathes and it moves. Like when we're going into a solo, everyone gets excited. So Dennis, the drummer, starts speeding up his fill, and then we're in the solo, and it's like, oh, here we go. And that's really fun too. It's exciting. It's almost like you're on a ride with the music. You're like, okay, where are we going next? It's cool.
That's nice, man. So if you were, as you're saying, you're trying to capture that live side, did that change how you approached this songwriting to say how you did with like Bad Magic or anything?
What's funny about it, man, is with the songwriting aspect. So I wrote all these tunes when I got home, and I was stuck in quarantine, right, on an acoustic guitar. So a lot of them came out, and the way that a guitar player would approach an acoustic compared to an electric, it's totally different, especially for me. On an acoustic, I'll finger pick, I'll strum. So I'm writing these songs, which was a blessing in disguise, because what I did is I wrote songs that weren't just all about the guitar. It was about the melody. It was about creating a song with vocals and having it feel right.
Yeah.
But what I did with all of these songs is wrote them like that. And then when it was time to make the record, I said, okay, cool. I'm going to strip them down to nothing and build them back up in a trio setting. So really what happened was I had all these songs that were beautifully written for an acoustic. Like there's one song called Hallelujah, right?
Yeah.
That was like a ballad. It was like super cool guitar line, you know? And our producer, Eddie, he looks at me, he goes, he's British. He goes, Jared, he goes, it's pretty stale. And I'm like, oh, okay. What do you think? And he's like, play something with some energy. We got to do something. So I was like, okay. And he's like, no. And then he sits on the piano and he starts doing something, right? And I was like, well, how about this? And he goes, more and more. That song turned out to be like Children of the Grave Part 2.
Yeah,
Sabbath.
it's really heavy. It's almost Sabbathy in places.
Yeah, man. And what's funny about that is that started and it was like, you know, hallelujah, you know, with like all these guitars and stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, hallelujah. So it's fun to watch how these songs started. And I plan to at some point to release the demos because I sang and played the demos. I think people would freak because if you hear the songs how they are on the record, it's almost as if you're like, oh, I know this song, but it's like, this is the supercharged version of this acoustic, you know what I mean? Which is really cool.
That's cool, man. Like I say, when you mentioned Hallelujah, and obviously the first thing, well, I was reading the titles when they came through, and obviously being a music fan, the first thing I went back to was Jeff Buckley, and I was like, oh, is Jared going to record this? And then obviously your song Hallelujah came in, which is obviously your original, and I was like, this is not Jeff Buckley.
No, you're like, no, Jeff would not have. So funny. Yeah, it was cool though, man. I mean, I even listened to the record back now, and like, there's something about recording it to tape and being live in the room, like even like going back to that track Hallelujah, like all those solos, I did them on the floor. So it wasn't as if I went home and I went, what kind of solo should I put on this? That solo is like crazy and weird. And it's like, and what's funny about that is I was doing that with the guys and I just wanted to almost prove to myself with this record that I could do it. I could just play music and not have to rely on technology and really kind of display myself as an artist without having to have someone fix it. Because I'm not a perfect person in any way, you know, like you and everyone else. It's like, we're not perfect. No. It's just who we are. So this record kind of represents that.
Oh, nice one, man. Well, I was going to ask you there because I remember seeing a few months ago, you broke your arm and you had to have an operation and everything busted up. And I'm guessing you were recording around the time that you were healing.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like legit things were recorded as I was healing.
Oh man. Because like you're saying, those guitar parts, they're not light acoustic bits. You're fully on tearing it up. So I just wondered how your arm held out more than anything, man.
Good. It's funny because when that happened, obviously that rocked my world, right? As a someone who uses their hands every day for their craft, it's like, oh my gosh. But what happened, which was kind of a blessing in disguise, was when this all went down, you know, it made me stop dead in my tracks and say, oh my gosh, how am I have to basically pivot back from this, right? And I remember after I got out of the surgery, I was like picking the guitar with like one finger just to make sure I could still do it, right? So I kind of rebuilt all that up over about 7-8 weeks. I rebuilt all that. And my arm, truth be told, man, like it never, you know, like for a long time, it didn't feel right. You know, it felt weird, like, you know, I don't know if this is okay.
Yeah.
And I'm playing guitar and I'm like, I hope I don't break it again because I'm going crazy, you know? But there is some cool stuff though, like even like that riff for that song Down the Drain. Like I remember sitting there with my guitar, dude, I swear, I'm just getting a guitar so you can see what I was looking like, literally laying in bed. Let me see, hold on. Yeah. Sitting in bed, I don't know if you can hear us, but I was doing. But I'm sitting there laid up with my arm propped up, just messing around with this riff, you know? So what's funny, even the arm break, it kind of in turn helped influence a few songs and a few parts.
Oh, cool.
And I'm lucky because I'm back to good. So thankfully I was able to bounce back off of it and come out with this record, man, which like I said, I feel really positive about.
That's good, man. Was there any like song that in particular that kind of set the trajectory for the record, or do they also come flowing?
Well, there was. It It's funny because the first song that we cut for this record was My Delusion, which is the first song.
The track, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first track, and that track, it's kind of like a boogie blues, but it's heavy, right?
Mm.
But what I really loved about that is in that recording, we only tracked that song once.
Oh
So
wow.
what you hear, we didn't track anything more than 3 times. And if we had 3, we would listen to them and we go, all right, which one do we like the best?
Nice.
Um, but with that one, I remember we were so excited to finally be in the studio and out of that little hole in the wall closet I was telling you about, that I could feel the energy on the track. And it was so cool because once we recorded that, it almost set like the tone and the benchmark for the album. We all went in the studio or the control room and we listened, and I was like, yeah, this is good. This is the direction. So what we did for the whole record in term was like, as we were cutting things, we were thinking to ourselves, okay, how are we gonna stay here? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Show different colors of this kind of sonic. And really the whole record, I think there's something to be said too about using the same musicians on the record, everyone being, a team on a record. I think
Definitely.
that really helps kind of keep the consistency.
I think, like you say, you've got that gang mentality about it, and it does feel like a gang hitting it and making a point. You know, you've got that, or everyone's firing on all cylinders on this record. It's not.
It's not just a guitar record where it's like, okay, cool, yeah, songs where, it's just a bunch of solos, like Dennis on the drums and Clark on the bass and everything. It's like when I listen, it's like everyone was really, really well oiled up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I
It's
mean,
cool.
I felt like that when I first saw you live, was when you were supporting Glenn Hughes sort of 7 years ago in the UK.
Electric Ballroom? No.
No, I was at the Norwich show, so it's Norwich
Oh
Water.
yeah, Norwich, of course. Yeah.
So I was at that one, but
At the
um,
waterfront.
yeah,
Yeah. Cool
yeah,
venue.
that was a great venue, man. Yeah, so I was at that show, and I remember thinking, like, obviously it's under your moniker as such, but it felt like a gang and it felt like a unit bringing it to the stage, and I felt the same on this record. Like you say, Dennis and Clark are firing off the bat on this record as well as yourself.
Yeah, it's really important. I think no matter what, like obviously it's under Jared James Nichols, but the one thing that I always wanted to instill is it is a team. And at the end of the day, I want those musicians that are playing, supporting what I'm doing,
Hmm.
whether it's bass, drums, whatever. I want them to feel as if, they everyone has a very serious job to hold up. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's like, and if you have a band that you don't necessarily, it's like, whatever, I'll just get whoever. It shows. It's really, really awesome to have consistency and also just musicians that love to do it. I think that's really important.
definitely, buddy. I mean, the songwriting on this is great, and I was saying, like, been saying that the last couple of days. Obviously, Down the Drain, in the last single that you've done, but the tracks like, obviously, we spoke about Hallelujah earlier, but Shadow Dancer and Good Time Girl, or Saint or Fool, or the whole album's just storming. But one song that particularly resonated with me, for reasons we were talking about off air, was Out of Time,
Yeah.
because I lost my dad as well, and when you scream out that lyric of "cut my heart down to the bone," I was like, "Oh fuck!"
Yeah, buddy.
That's just got it, man. And then obviously later finding out that you wrote about your own experience with your dad, man, I could completely resonate with that.
Yeah, that was a weird one too, because like I remember obviously, so I lost my dad in December of 2020, right? So it was an interesting point because I'd already been dealing with everything as we all had with, the pandemic and all of this stuff. And, about 10 months of that, and then to have this happen, I was starting to almost, lose faith
Mm,
in like what I was like, what is happening? Like
yeah,
I felt as if not only my life, but like everything was kind of unraveling, because my one consistency was always playing music.
yeah,
And I always, that's like my anchor. And I lost that in that time. And then, obviously like yourself, for me, my dad was my biggest hero.
definitely.
And when I lost him, it wasn't like I just lost my dad. It was like I lost my best friend, and I lost that guy that I always look up to, right? So it was so heavy. And I remember like with that song, I didn't write that song and go, I'm gonna write a song for my dad. Like that never happened. It
No,
was like it started to come out and I just started to do it. And like it just was so like it was his song. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm gonna write my dad a tribute. It just I wrote it and it's him. It's right there. And it's just weird because you know, even that song, like I still haven't really listened to it since I cut it. Cause it's just like, you know, it's a stunner for me and it's still fresh, if that
Of
makes
course.
sense.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, so you say it was just 2 years ago that you
Yeah,
lost.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that's no time, man.
Yeah, and but it's I'm so it feels so good to be able to put that down on record, you know? And that's another thing about this record and that song is trying to express some vulnerability as like an artist and not in a way that's like cheesy like, "Oh, I want people to," but it's like no, just being true to myself and like saying, you know, like, "Okay, this song isn't about, you know, I'm not going to dazzle you with my guitar. It's not about that. This
No,
is about like some real shit." You know what I mean? And I
yeah.
think that that's it's something I really was happy to be able to do on this record.
But you like for me, yourself, or your playing has always been very emotional. Like you've always like, you know, like my favorite players are all emotion. Gary Moore, Joe Perry, these
Yep.
guys always play with emotion from the heart, and I've always found that yourself. So obviously, particularly on a song like that, which is, you know, from the heart and from like a one of the speaking from personal experience, the worst place you can sort of be in life. So to you know to channel it in that way, it was always going to come across, man.
Yeah, man. And like even for me, like digging deeper, like, you know, my dad was one of my biggest supporters ever of me playing. And I always remember him. He would always say, play from your heart. My dad wasn't a musician. He
Yeah.
didn't know anything about music. You know, he knew good music. He listened to great music. He showed me great music, but he wasn't a musician or, you know, my dad never met anyone, you know, tried to do anything that he was a construction worker and but he always said, play from your heart. He said, you know, you gotta be true to yourself. So from an early age of me playing guitar, it has always been about that. And when I did find the guitar, it is like my emotional therapy. So even more so than, you know, a lot of people, you know, will chalk it up like, you know, guitar players or music is like a competition. Like for me, it's like therapy, man. And whenever I pick up a guitar, I'm trying to talk through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I sat. I'm a bass player, and I've been for a long time. And I've wrote songs here and there, and I can't. I just you lose yourself in it. I can't even tell you how many hours I sat there with my bass when my dad passed away. Not because I was trying to form anything or write anything necessarily. Just wanted to get lost in another world for a bit. You know.
That's yeah, and I think that's the best part about music, and especially you know as a player, you get lost in it.
Definitely.
All of your day-to-day worries, or even, you know, losing your dad, you know, it's like you find some sort of peace and comfort when you're playing and when you're creating music. And that's the power of it to me. You know, it's like a lot of people, you know, music, I feel like for some people is a tool. It's
Mm,
like, you know, it's, oh, I'm going to try and make money, or I'm going to try and be in this band or do this or show this. For me, and I feel like for a guy like you, music is truly like our therapy. It's what like helps us get through the day. You know what I mean?
definitely, man. Can definitely resonate with you there, man. And you know, speaking of these songs and everything, you've just announced a London date so people can come see these songs performed live, buddy.
Only one date in the UK. I promise more.
So you better come back.
I will. I promise. There will be. You guys will be sick of me by the end of the year. I promise.
I'll hold you to that. But I was looking at your obviously you got the date at the Blackheart in London, but I was also looking at the one you're doing in Nashville. You got some great guests coming in for that, man, with people like Richie
And
Faulkner and Pete Keys and
what's funny though is even more guests are going to be announced today. Because
really.
here's the thing, like I wanted to go all out. Like this is might sound funny, but for this record, and like now that I feel like I'm really back trying to hit my stride, like, you know, after losing my dad, like, you know, like you don't have all the time in the world. You know, I was like, you know what, with this record and everything, I just want to push it, man. Like, let's go. So I started hitting people up. I was like, dude, you want to come jam at the show? You want to come, you know? And the first guy I did a session, I was doing a recording session with Peter Keys.
Nice.
And I was like, Peter, you know, I met him years ago and I toured with Skinner. I said, you want to come to the show and jam? He's like, yeah, of course. So I was like, all right, cool. Then I hit up my buddy, Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest. Richie, you want to come jam? Yeah. And then my friend Zach Myers from Shinedown, the guitar player. Zach, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to be in Memphis, which is like 4 hours away. I was like, want to come up and jam at my show in Nashville? He's like, yep. Now I'm talking to Joe and from Hailstorm and all these different bands. You know, it's just awesome that for this, people are out to show support, and it feels good because, music, the power of music, jamming together, collaborating, that's really one of my favorite parts. And I think tomorrow night people are going to be in for a special treat.
Oh, people have to keep their eyes out for that one there, man.
Yeah, man, totally.
But you were saying, no, this is a great record. And looking back, I remember seeing early part of last year after a gig, I think it was in Portland, I'm right in saying.
Yep,
You had a hell of an experience, and the album might not have even happened, mate. Like,
dude.
it's crazy when I was reading about that. I saw your status come up, and I had to read it like 3 or 4 times, and I was sat here with my wife on the sofa, and I'm like, holy hell! Like,
Yes, that was one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me, to be
insane.
honest. It was, after touring around everywhere, yeah, you expect some crazy, but you never expect things that are like life flashes before your eyes. So long story short, I was after a show. I went and got some food with a friend that lives in Portland. And he said, "Hey man, hop in my car. I'll take you back to your hotel." So we're like 2 minutes from my hotel, right? At a stoplight. There's no one else on the road. We're listening to music, and it's not that loud, but it's loud enough.
Yeah.
And he goes, he was asking if he takes a left on the next street, right? Like, hey, do I take a left? And we got smashed like 40 miles an hour,
Wow.
rear-ended by a truck. And we got hit hard enough that our airbags went off, the seats broke in the car, the whole thing. So I'm sitting there kind of like out of it, right? And then I wake up only to find that there's this truck that hit us. And the truck that hit us was a stolen truck. It had 4 flat tires. Like, the thing was bad, but it was a really big truck. And the guy left. Like, his friend was behind him, and he jumped in the back of his truck, and they left. So we sat there and we're like, what just happened, right? So then we call the police, and we're waiting for the police to get there. And in the meantime, the guys come back to get stuff out of the truck that they'd left for dead. And when the guy saw me, I was standing there, and I was so out of it, man. Like, I was, from just getting hit and being in an accident, I was nervous and almost shaky, right?
Yeah.
And he comes right up to me, and he pulls a gun, and he has a gun to my head, and he's screaming at me. And it was one of the scariest things that I'd ever encountered, because when I looked at this guy, there's certain things when you look in someone's eyes, and if you don't see anything, it's kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, he doesn't care what's going to happen to him or to me or to anything. So truly, that was one of the craziest experiences of my life. And I'm grateful that we're sitting here talking right now.
Yeah, I bet, man. Like, when I was just reading it alone was like a shock to read, let alone to have experience, buddy.
Very traumatic, man. Very traumatic. I still have trauma from that. And I know that might sound funny, but
No,
like,
not at all. I think if anyone would have been in that scenario where, they got a gun pulled out on them, they would.
yeah, with that, and not only that, even when I'm at stoplights now, I get nervous looking at the cars behind me, thinking someone's going to come and smash me. It's weird to think, but trauma works in weird ways. And yeah, that was a scary ordeal, bro.
Yeah, it is, well, bet, buddy. Well, I'm glad you got through it, man. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you released this album, buddy.
100%, bro.
I'm even more glad you come to the UK. So I have to come down to the show, the Blackheart.
Please do, man. I love coming to the UK. It's been over 3 years now. I was there, right before the everything happened, like lockdown, and then we flew out of London City back home, and I went, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I'll
because
probably
you
be
were
back
doing
like,
shows with my friend's Wolfjaw at the time, weren't you?
yes,
Yeah.
they were with us. Tom, rest in peace.
Yeah, bless him.
Absolutely.
Got his picture
We
up.
do you nice.
Yeah.
We were actually all together when everything happened. We were in Switzerland playing a show, and we were in the same Sprinter together. And what ended up happening, man, is like, we were like, okay, we just have to get back to the UK. We have to buy plane tickets so we can get home. So Tom, God bless you, man. I spent almost 2 days with him running across France to get back to the border. And we're sitting there looking at each other, looking at the news, and we're going, what's happening? And we get back to, we got on the last ferry to Broadstairs in the UK. And that's another surreal one where, you think something will be done soon. And here we are 3 years later.
Crazy, isn't it?
Crazy, man. It's nuts. But I love coming to the UK. It's going to be I feel like it's going to be like a new lease to come tour, man. It's like, we had amazing times back then, but now is now. I got a new record to promote. And I think that it's going to really resonate, and I think people are going to like it.
Oh, wicked, buddy. Well, but what's the rest of the year hold up for you? So you got the album out and take you promoting that. You've got the show in Nashville, show in London, and then you're doing some European dates as well. But
Doing
what
some
else?
European dates. Yep. Got dates here in the States. A ton of stuff, man. We're already working on booking another European run and a full UK tour. So we got a lot in the works.
Wicked, buddy.
Yep.
Sounds good, man. All right, man. Well, at the beginning of the show, as we've been talking about it quite a bit, I'm going to play Hallelujah at the beginning of the interview. But what song off the album would you like us to play at the end of the interview?
You pick. Which one do you want to play?
Oh, man.
We could play. Let me think. You could play. What's an? I mean, I like anyone. Maybe play Hardwired.
Hardwired? We'll do that.
Yeah, it's another rocker.
Another rock one. All right, Jared. Thanks for chatting to me, man. And see you
Dude,
soon.
of course. I'll see you soon, brother. All the best. Cheers to you, man.
No worries. Take care, buddy.
All right. See you, Lee.
Bye, mate.
Later.